Upstairs at the moment, Tammy Erickson is meeting with our 2 ninth graders and one of their parents, because we think that it's important that we talk with our young people about stewardship. And we have exercises that the kids and their parents work on. How do we steward our time? So we give them a sheet with a bunch of different categories of the 168 hours in a week. How much do you spend sleeping? How much do you spend eating, studying, or working, or whatever? We also give them a scenario: if you have $5,000, you can buy this kind of car for $30,000, you can buy this kind of car for $10,000, you can buy this kind of car for $3,500. What kind of decision are you going to make? How do we steward our money? And today they're talking about if you make $30,000 a year, how are your expenses? Or if you make $24,000 or $48,000 a year, what do you spend your money on? Because we want to have conversations about stewardship. One of the other questions that we ask is,
that's right.
Should the government set guidelines or policy levels in terms of what cars get what gas mileage? Because we want to think about how to take care of the environment, how to steward the environment. And it's because we try and take all of that seriously as God's children that when Terry, I guess maybe Sean Finwall,
yeah.
Put us in touch with each other, and when Terry offered to come on a Sunday morning, I thought, well, this is consistent with our calling to be faithful stewards and caretakers of God's world. So Terry, we're very happy to have you with us at the start of this hour, and we're all yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Should I stand up here?
Yeah. Wander around. Do you want a podium?
Actually, just standing like this is good, and thank you again for inviting me in. And it was a very nice service, and everybody was very warm and welcoming. So thank you. And as I said up there, I'm with a nonprofit called the Neighborhood Energy Connection. For over 30 years, we've been working mainly in the East Metro, helping people save money on their energy bills at home. And we partner with Xcel Energy, so those that are Xcel Energy customers can participate in our programs. And the city of Maplewood asked us to partner with them because Maplewood as a city has been taking steps to be more sustainable and reduce energy costs, and seeing what they can do as a city. And so we've been working with them for the past year or so, and their previous energy challenge was mainly city workers, seeing what they could do to reduce energy in their homes, because our programs are focused on residential energy programs. And so this is, I guess, the next phase, and the city is reaching out to places of worship in the area, and also businesses in Maplewood. Now, I realize that not everybody, the church itself is in Maplewood, but not all the church members live in Maplewood. But for the purposes of this challenge, we're hoping that it's going to be something that everybody can participate in and learn something from. So first what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about the organization that I work for, NEC, and then I'll briefly talk a little bit more about the challenge, see if anybody has any questions. I think I was shooting for around 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep it, somewhere in there. So the Neighborhood Energy Connection, like I said, we've been working for over 30 years in St. Paul to help people save energy. And two of our, I guess, most popular programs, one is called the Home Energy Squad. So you might have seen the little transit that I drove out here today with the XL logo and the NEC logo on the side. Two of my coworkers will come out to your house, and in less than an hour they'll swap out your light bulbs, install weather stripping, a programmable thermostat, water heater blanket, just basic energy saving items that will save you money right away. So it's kind of the low-hanging fruits, if you will, just easy things you can do right away to start saving money on your energy bills. We also have an energy audit program, which is where an auditor doesn't install anything, but they use diagnostic tools to see how efficient your home is. One of them is they put a big fan in your door. They get the fan going, it depressurizes the house, then they can walk around and look for leaks. They have like this little smoke machine, you know, little thing, handheld thing, and they can see what the leaks are. And then make recommendations to help you or give you a prioritized list of steps you can take to maybe add insulation in your walls or in your attic, replace your furnace, things of that nature. And the programs are affordable already because of the partnership with Excel. Normally, for example, the Home Energy Squad, where we do the installs, that is a $70 program, but for the purposes of this challenge, we're offering it for half of that, so it would be $35. And the audit is, the standard audit is $60, and that goes on your Excel utility bill. Is how that works. Another benefit of the partnership with Excel is that we use income guidelines, and so for some people that meet those guidelines, the Home Energy Squad visit and the audits are potentially free. So in a lot of cases for seniors, for students, and other low-income families, the program is free. And I think, especially if you're not making a lot of money, being able to save money on your energy bill is much more important. And I guess similarly, another program that we, in addition to those, we also have a loan specialist who has a program that's specifically for suburban Ramsey County. And again, there's income guidelines, so it benefits low-income families the most, but it's basically a forgivable loan. And I can leave these here, and this explains all the terms and everything, but for those who qualify, you can get your, it's more like a grant to do energy projects, and after 10 years it's completely forgiven. So it's...
That's a very good program. My husband and I, we used that, we used that like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
When it first opened up, we heard about it, and we used the money to replace windows. And the amount of money we saved replacing those windows was humongous, you know, so, and they still don't work.
Yeah, no, it really, and the money comes from the federal government in the form of a block grant, and so Ramsey County is using our organization to help disperse the funds, but part of the problem is people hear about it and they think it's too good to be true, and so they don't investigate it further. And you do have to live in your home for 10 years to have it completely forgiven, but in that time, you're not paying any interest. So, I mean, the worst case scenario is you get these energy upgrades, improves the value of your house, you move out, and you pay it back without any interest. But anyways, it's that's another program that we offer, and if there's anybody in the congregation that lives in Roseville, the city of Roseville has agreed to pay for anybody's energy audit. So if you live in the city of Roseville, we'll come out and do your audits, and then the city will mail you a check to pay for your audit. And so I don't know if there is anybody in the congregation from Roseville, but I guess there's, if energy efficiency is something that's important to you and your family, then you should touch bases with us, because there's a good chance that we can help you, finance that project and just learn more about your home's energy use. So, for the purposes of the energy challenge, like I said, we've been working with Maplewood for a while, and they are, or we, I guess, because I'm part of this, we're inviting congregations to participate in this challenge, and the way that it works is there's different actions you can take at your home. Some of them involve signing up for our program, and there's others as well. And then, as a group, did we drop one of these off for you guys? Mm-hmm. Okay. And this is the kit, the challenge kit, but there's a little where people can put their name and the action taken and the amount of points are included on here. So some of the other things you can do, you can recycle your refrigerator with Excel. So if you have a second, a lot of people they'll get a new one, they'll put their old one in the garage for beer or whatever. Unfortunately, that older one uses a lot of energy, and so Excel will come and pick that up for you, and I think even give you a rebate. Another action you can take is signing up for WindSource, where, again, through Excel Energy, you can sign up and pay, a little bit extra each month, and then that portion goes to invest in wind power. So all of that stuff is on here, and then this is just a way to sort of track your progress as a group to see how you're doing, and you also can sign up on the city's website and kind of see how you're doing against other area churches that are also participating. One thing I should mention too is, like I said, I realize that not everybody, even though the church itself is in Maplewood, not everybody is going to live within the city of Maplewood, but to participate in our program, we can offer our program to anybody that gets both gas and electric from Excel Energy. And that's mainly in the East Metro. However, we're doing another project up in the Chisago Lakes area, way up there. And they participate, or some of the residents up there participate. It's just the nature of the utilities that they kind of carve up their different territories. And where my parents live in Hastings, some people get both gas and electric from Excel, and some don't. Some that live right across the street. So, but in any case, we've designed the challenge so that everybody can hopefully participate and get something out of this.
So do you have a program where you can come in and change all the church's light bulbs? Say yes.
I'll answer that. Thursday, I have an appointment with the guy from Excel who audited this building.
Okay.
And we also are dealing with a lighting consultant, especially about the sanctuary. So,
nice, good.
not to put you on the spot, there are different programs, but your Board of Church Properties is hard at work both inside the building and outside.
Yeah, and our organization is specifically residential energy. We have a sister organization based out of Minneapolis called Center for Energy and Environment. So those of you who might live in Minneapolis or some of the western suburbs, you could take advantage of these programs, but it wouldn't be through NEC, it would be through CEE. But they do a lot of the same stuff, they're just a lot bigger. They also do commercial auditing. So, but I'll cut it off there, and then I'll answer any questions that you all have.
Yeah, I've done some of your audits. I've put in installation 2 or 3 times, and the last time I put it in inside, you know, those needed the inside. I've done everything they said, and I'm not gaining anything. Is there any way that you can when you do these checks? Is there any way you can do one at a time on a furnace or air conditioner or lights, or find out where you're? I got the highest of anybody in the town, 800% higher.
And you did have an audit?
No, not really.
Okay.
Maybe they come out and tell me I need more insulation all the time. Drop.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to, I guess, your specific situation, but the way our audit program works is the auditor will come out and, you know, use this diagnostic testing I was talking about. You know, the blower door, they also have infrared imaging that they use. And then after they do the audit, about a week later, you'll get a customized audit report that gives your home like a you know, home performance rating, and then, you know, the next steps. And then if you, at least with our program, if you do follow through and, you know, do insulation or, you know, follow through with the other recommendations, we have a quality assurance manager that will come back to your home after the insulation project is done, and will make sure that the contractor did what they said they were going to do, and will, you know, do, I guess, another audit just to guarantee that everything was done the right way. You know, we're a nonprofit, we're mission driven, so we're not, you know, trying to, you know, sell you windows or anything like that. We really are just working with Excel to help people improve their home's energy efficiency.
So windows too.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes people do. It's just the thing with windows though is oftentimes a window, you know, depending on the size of your house, replacing all the windows can be, you know, upwards of $20,000, and the amount of payback on a window job might not, you know, depending on how long you stay in the house, it might not pay for itself. Installation usually will. So a lot of times what we'll tell people, if you want, I mean, windows can certainly improve your home's value and make it a little bit more efficient, but in the wintertime, you can often seal up your windows with the plastic wrap and then just kind of caulking around the sides of it. But that's all personal preference.
I know I have a 3-season porch that I made a 4-season porch out of, and that's mostly all windows, so that's probably not going to ever save too much there, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I have been through an energy audit process, and the nice thing about the audit is when the recommendations are made, they rank them from their, I don't know if this particular audit does it in this way, but they can, I know that they can walk you through this. It will say the things that will save you the most energy, and then also they can do cost benefit, because maybe the thing that is going to save you the most energy is also the most expensive, and so it's not worth it. But like adding insulation, I've often been told adding insulation before you make sure that all of the leaks in your house are sealed doesn't make sense. So you can add all the insulation you want, but if the wind's blowing through next to your window, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and air sealing is, I guess, what, yeah, you do the air sealing and then the insulation, that's exactly right. And who did the?
It was CEE.
CEE, okay, yeah.
But I want to do it again. So, and I live in St. Paul now, so.
You can do one in St. Paul. But yeah, and So you described the process very well. That's exactly what happens with the audit report. And we also have advisors that will, contact you and give you next steps, let you know if there's rebates available, tax credits, and then, as I was mentioning, there's financing options to help people do the bigger projects. So that's all part of the services that we offer. And I guess the city of Maplewood is hoping that if a lot of people get involved and start thinking about their energy use in their homes, they'll also start thinking about energy use as a community. And some people are motivated by their their carbon footprint. Other people are just it makes good sense because saving money is important to all of us, especially living in Minnesota where we'll probably be using our heating for 6 months of the year. So whatever we can do to save ourselves some money and make our homes more efficient is a definite plus. So I guess with the challenge is designed to make it fun, but hopefully in the least everybody will at least learn a little bit more about their home and save some money.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
So, we'll have I've got that packet, and if you leave those brochures, you can certainly get one this morning before you go. We'll have some in the narthex and some in the office so that you can follow up as you wish. And
I'll leave some of these on the table, and I'll leave my card, and if you and I encourage you to call us and ask us any questions that you have. Very good.
all right, so we are going to pick up our study of the Gospel of Mark, our overview. Again, the impossible task of studying any of the Gospels in less than 3 hours on a Sunday morning. Last time we looked at basically the middle of the Gospel, and we talked about the fact that that Mark is the story of Jesus, and that Mark, in the Gospel of Mark, we have 3 times, Jesus performs different sorts of miracles. He heals people, he stills the storm at sea, he casts out demons, he raises Jairus' daughter from the dead, he gives sight to the blind, and that's a key kind of miracle in the Gospel of Mark, because it's all about, do you see who Jesus really is? All right, that's what we talked about last time. And then when Jesus and the disciples get to Caesarea Philippi, which is as far away from Jerusalem as you can get, he asks them, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Some say you're John the Baptist, others Elijah or one of the prophets. Who do you say that I am? Peter says, you are the Christ. And Jesus' immediate response is not, tell everybody, but don't tell a soul. And the reason is that he wants to tell them what that means. And so there are 3 times in the Gospel of Mark where Jesus tells them about what's coming. The Son of Man is going to Jerusalem. There he'll be turned over to the scribes and Pharisees. They will condemn him to death, and after 3 days he will rise again. All right. From there, everything goes downhill, or begins to go downhill. We ended with his entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, where he is hailed as King, Son of David, the Anointed One. And the assumption by many in Jerusalem is that he will throw the Romans out, because that's what a real king would do, throw the Romans out. But I think we have talked about the fact that with Jesus, I can't remember if this is in our Tuesday study, but I think we've talked about it in here, that the enemy is not Rome, but sin, death, and the power of the devil. Has that been Sunday morning conversation or just Tuesday?
Tuesday for sure.
Tuesday for sure. Have we talked about that on Sunday? All right. Well, Jesus has come to do battle with sin, death, and the power of the devil, more so than with Rome. Does Jesus love the Romans?
Yes, she spoke to
He
it.
does.
She spoke to it.
Okay. All right. So what he has come to do is defeat sin, death, and the power of the devil. All right. Any questions before we move on,
The
Marlos?
Pharisees couldn't put somebody to death, could they? But were they pretty sure that if they did that, what they did, that somebody else would do that?
Right, that's why in Jesus last week, the Pharisees have Jesus arrested. When Judas Iscariot takes soldiers to the Garden of Gethsemane, those are soldiers or policemen who are assigned, they're Jews, assigned to protect the temple. Because there's a fence inside the temple compound, not unlike what we just built, you know, ours is a retaining wall, but I mean there's a boulder fence, and on that are posted signs so that you can't miss it. Any Gentile that crosses this line will be killed. So those soldiers, those policemen that went with Judas were from the temple, sent by the council, the high Jewish council, to arrest him. Okay? They assumed that once they found him guilty, and that was a foregone conclusion, they could send him to Pilate, and Pilate would order him executed. Right, we'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. Anything else before we go on to new material? Okay? So, Jesus enters Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. The crowd hails him as their king, and then nothing happens. He goes to the temple, he looks around, and he goes home. He goes back on Monday. Let's turn to Mark 11, verses 15 to 19. Mark 11, 15 to 19. Let's see, page 879 if you're using the Bibles on the table.
What verse?
Starting at 11.
11, 15.
Or excuse me, chapter 11, starting at verse 15. All right, would somebody read 15 to 19 for us, please?
And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he taught and said to them, Is it not written, My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations? But you have made it a den of robbers. And the chief priests and scribes heard it and sought a way to destroy him. For they feared him, because all the multitude was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city.
All right, did we read that last week? So, he goes
No.
back to the temple,
You didn't read that.
and in the temple, in the outer court, all right, here's the temple proper, all right? And in this outer court where Gentiles are allowed, there are merchants. And the merchants perform a very useful function. If you're going to give an offering in the temple, you have to use Jewish coin. You can't use Roman coin or any other kind of coin, because most of those coins would have the picture of a god or goddess on the coin. All right, where we have George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, there would be a picture of Zeus or Jupiter, or you know what I mean? And that's unfit for an offering in God's house. So you have to use Jewish coin. So there are tables where there's a money changer, and she will be happy to trade your Greek coin or your Roman coin for Jewish coin. And there will be a slight fee, right? Just like today. You go to the airport, you're flying to Brazil, right? You can change at the airport your American dollars for whatever the currency of Brazil is. Okay? So they perform a service. The other service that's performed on the temple grounds is to help somebody like Howard, who lives 50 miles from Jerusalem, and he's come to Jerusalem to offer a sacrifice in the temple. The animal that he offers has to be unblemished. So poor Howard, if he walks 49 miles leading his prize bull, and the bull steps in a hole in the street and breaks his ankle, Howard is out of luck, because now that bull is no good. So the practice became for somebody like Howard to sell his prize bull in his hometown, put the money in his pocket, and when he got to the temple, buy a bull that only had to walk 10 feet, right? So Howard doesn't have to worry about, am I going to walk all this way leading my prize bull and not be able to, to offer him. So that's what the merchants are doing. So the issue with Jesus and the merchants in the temple is not whether they're honest or dishonest. The issue is whether or not Howard or you or I should think about what God is looking for in terms of a sacrifice. And is God interested in a sacrifice where I give my prize bull, or my, Mary had a little lamb, or is God interested in me making a personal sacrifice? I mean, you could say the bull or the lamb are a personal sacrifice, but it would be more like writing a check rather than giving time. Okay? Easiest thing to do is write a check in a lot of situations, right? I mean, when when somebody calls up and says, I need help, easiest thing to do is write a check and send them on their way. Instead of asking, what do you really need? Is there something that, if you had a friend who was interested, would that be more help? All right, that sort of thing. So, when he clears the temple, again, the issue is not the honesty of the merchants, but what's the temple for? And it is to be a house of prayer, a house of worship, where we are to understand that life and service to God involves self-sacrifice, all right? And that it is not just for Jews. Should this not be a house of prayer for all nations? All right, so those are the issues that Jesus has with the temple and the temple crowd. All right? Thoughts, comments? Does that make sense?
I'm curious about the den of robbers.
Yeah.
And if that has to do with the fees being like the exchange.
That-
Because then obviously people are making a living off of it.
Right,
and
right.
How that factors into it.
And Tyler, honestly, the first 20 years, if I preached on this text, that's what I tended to emphasize. But in the last 18 years of my reading, the issue is more about all nations. That in a culture where discrimination runs rampant, and in a setting, like we talked about last time, I think, where the temple in Jerusalem is the most segregated spot on the face of the earth, because no Gentile is allowed past this line, and no woman is allowed past this line. This is the court of the Jewish women, right? So you have to be male to get inside this fence. You have to be a priest to get inside the temple proper. and then only one priest can go behind the curtain in the temple. And so rather than restricting and constricting who is welcome, Jesus is opening all the doors. Okay? And so I think, I guess from speaking of my personal bias, I'd rather talk about dishonest merchants than how in my life I'm supposed to be opening doors. You know what I mean? Rather than, well, honesty is good, and as long as all I have to deal with is my kind of people, I'm all for that. Okay?
Well, and I'm sure that amongst those people who were doing there were honest ones and there were dishonest ones.
Sure.
That's the way we are.
Right, that's people.
Maybe there are people just, getting by, not trying to make a benefit out of it.
Sure, sure. All right, so Jesus keeps going back to the temple that week. And it's kind of interesting. He clears the temple, figuratively speaking, one day. He didn't literally drive out everybody, but he made a fuss. All right. He keeps going back, and one of the next days that he goes back, the people who are interested in stopping him are ready to test him to see if they can catch him in a trap and give them even more reason to have him arrested. Right? They're looking for reasons to arrest him, to justify his arrest. And so the first question put to him is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? So, if Rome is the enemy, if Rome were the enemy, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? The terrorists or freedom fighters, depending upon your point of view, would say, you don't pay taxes to Caesar, that's just helping the occupation, right? So, if Jesus says, yes, it is lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, then the freedom fighters or the terrorists, the zealots, no, he's not one of them. He's the enemy. If you support Rome, it's just like President Bush said when the war on terror started. If you're not with us, you're part of the problem. You're against us. All right? Or, if he says, no, we shouldn't pay taxes to Rome, then they know they won't have to arrest him because the Romans will. All right? So, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? What does he ask them? Who's got a coin? Anybody have a coin? All right, that's what he asks. And he says to them, here the translation in our Bibles to this day is very poor. He says, our Bibles say what? Whose picture is on the coin or something like that, or whose face is on the coin.
Likeness.
Whose likeness is on the coin. The real question is, whose image is on the coin? What's the answer? They look at the coin. Oh, it's George Washington, right? Caesar's image is on the coin. Now, why is that word image so important? What does Jesus say? Render to Caesar that which bears Caesar's image, the coin. And render to God what bears God's image. What bears God's image? Us, Gus and Dottie and Richard, right? So, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? Well, it is. We all got to pay taxes, okay? So we render to Caesar what bears Caesar's image. Is the government due our support? It is. But render to God what bears God's image. Our lives are God's. All right? Caesar or the federal government of the United States deserve our support. All right? There is a role for government to play in this world. But our lives are God's. So, Trap number 1, he deals with the trap, okay? Trap number 2, the Sadducees come to him. Now the Sadducees do not believe in the resurrection of the dead, right? They are the conservatives. So the Sadducees say to him, we got a question for you. There's a man who's married to a woman and she dies. No, there's a man who's married to a woman and he dies. And Jewish law says that she would then become the wife of his next male kin. All right, so. No, next male kin. So I die, Michelle, who is my property as long as I'm living. I'm so glad you're here today. So we can talk about this at lunch. I die, Michelle becomes the property of my brother Dick. Michelle doesn't get a vote. And her father's already sold her to me, right? That's what a dowry is, right? Or, you bargain, okay? So the Sadducees say, this man dies, so she's given to his brother. And he dies. And his brother dies, and she's married 7 times, and then she dies. When she gets to heaven, whose wife will she be? What's striking about their question? They don't believe that anybody's going to heaven because they don't believe in the resurrection of the dead. So the Sadducees are asking a question of Jesus that to them makes no sense at all. My dad calls me up one night when he's still living in Springfield, Virginia, and he says to me, when I go to heaven, I want to be married to your mother. Isn't that the way it is? I said to him, you should ask your pastor that question. Don't ask your son. Ask your pastor. I said, I don't think that's the way it works. I said, but ask your pastor, he'll tell you. He said, I've already asked my pastor. I said, well, what did he say? He said, same thing you just said. And Dad says, and I don't like that. I want to be married to your mother in heaven. Well, I can't remember if I said something flip like, I don't think we get it won't be up to you in heaven. There's a Lord in heaven or what. But, so what I finally said to him was, I think, I don't even understand this, but I think when you get to heaven, you'll be closer to Mom than you can even imagine. And if in the Bible you won't be married to her, maybe that says something more about she won't be your property. Okay? Because God created us equal, male and female. Right? And this notion that husbands should rule their wives, that's a result of sin. That's not God's original plan. Wouldn't it be more heavenly if we were closer than that, and not property? So, I think I'm telling Dad good stuff, okay? This should, he should be smiling at the other end of the phone, But the Sadducees ask a question about property in heaven. And the thing is, they don't even believe in heaven. And Jesus says to them, what you're describing isn't the way it is. Okay? You won't be somebody's property. Okay? In heaven. But that'll make it better for everybody. Because it's not necessarily better for me if Michelle's my property. Sometimes I think, well, we should try that, just see. But it won't work, right? That's not the way it's supposed to be.
And she feels likewise.
What?
And she feels likewise.
Let me tell you, she feels likewise. And in fact, now I'm glad that I'm staying for a church properties meeting.
I was just
won't
gonna
have
say,
to have
you are one lucky fella. You have the board
maybe
of
she'll
church
forget
property.
by supper time. Who knows?
Keep digging the hole. Keep digging
Right.
the hole.
Let us pray that she forgets by supper time what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's not going to be a long night home.
That's right. The third question that they ask him is, what is the greatest commandment? And then he offers, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And one of the issues for the Pharisees and scribes is, same question put to him by the young lawyer, who is my neighbor? And their thinking is that neighbors are people we choose. Because either we can manage them or we can manage loving them. And what Jesus sort of fits with all nations is that there are no boundaries where I don't have to love that person. Right? Sylvia's not my responsibility, and I'm not hers. Why? Because we're not interested. Who defines who our neighbors are? I like to think I could do that. But again, Tyler, back to my reading in the last 18 years with all nations, what impresses me is, this is why it speaks so loudly to me. I never chose my brothers. It was not my choice. And it's not my choice who my neighbors are. That's God's choice. Who does God raise up in each of our lives for us to love? Right? And then finally, they asked Jesus a question about one of the Psalms where it talks about David making a footstool of his enemies. And Jesus says, I'm not only in David's line, David knew me in heaven. So he just blows them out of the water, these traps that are set for him by those who are looking to arrest him. All right? Comments, questions, thoughts about that? All right, so it is the week of Passover. What do you know about Passover?
It's from the Old Testament.
Sorry?
It's from the Old Testament.
From the Old Testament, what's the significance?
Well, if you had this blood on your doorpost, then Christ wouldn't kill the oldest son in the family.
Escaping the Egyptians.
Escaping the Egyptians, all right? So, the angel of death is going to pass through the land of Egypt, slaughter a lamb, paint the doorpost of your house with the blood of the lamb, and your home would be passed over when the angel of death passes through the land of Egypt. And it's that crisis that triggers Pharaoh's response to Moses, finally, take your people and get out of here. So they run to the they walk as fast as they can to the Red Sea. They get to the shore of the Red Sea, and the water is in front of them, and what's behind them? Pharaoh. Pharaoh has changed his mind, and his chariots are on the run. So Moses raises his staff, and the waters are parted. Not by Moses, but by God. And the people of Israel go through on dry land, and when the chariots reach the Red Sea, Moses drops his staff, and the Egyptians are killed, right? And the people are free. So, Passover is about freedom from oppression and God's salvation. I, the Lord your God, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Okay? So at Passover time, it's a little like an anniversary of 9/11. Security is heightened, right? Because for there to be another terrorist attack on 9/11 would have special significance, right? I mean, even greater. And so the Romans are concerned at Passover time that there might be Jews who are saying, you know, it was this time 1,000 years ago or 1,800 years ago that God set his people free from the oppressor, and maybe this is the year we throw out the Romans, right? So the Romans have heightened security. Jesus comes into town. He's hailed as the king, the Messiah, the Savior by some. He cleanses the temple, and people are excited. Right? So, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he takes his disciples with him. He takes 11. Judas Iscariot has already left the upper room where they have shared a Last Supper together. And Judas brings those soldiers with him to arrest Jesus. And they take him to the Jewish High Council. And the Jewish High Council puts him on trial. It's a foregone conclusion what the trial the result of the trial is a foregone conclusion, because they know they're going to find him guilty of blasphemy. Let's look at Mark 14. Can we go just a little longer today? I'd really like to finish Mark. Mark 14, starting at verse 57. Some stood up and bore false witness against Jesus, saying, "We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands." Yet not even so did their testimony agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" But he was silent and made no answer. Again the high priest asked him, "Are you the Christ, the Anointed One? Are you the Messiah, the King, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." And the high priest tore his garments and said, "Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision?" And they all condemned him as deserving death. And one of the questions is, how can you be the king if you have made the people who run the temple and the Pharisees, who are the most upright and pious citizens in all of Israel, if you have made them your enemies and you're now under their arrest? How can you be the king? That's crazy. And yet Jesus claims to be, and he yokes himself with God. And you will see the Son of Man coming, right? However he says it, from the power, or whatever he says.
Seated at the right hand of power.
Okay? So, he says, "I am the Messiah." And the high priest decides, he tears his clothes because this is blasphemy. This is a lie about God.
Isn't that why they asked him to get him to say
Right,
that?
right. They're looking for him to convict himself. Okay? But he's telling the truth. So, he's taken to Pilate. Pilate does not want to crucify Jesus. So he orders him flogged, and then he wants to release him. And the Jewish leaders are not satisfied. They want him silenced. So maybe it's not in Mark. I don't know if it, I don't remember. But in one of the Gospels, if you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar's. Well, Pilate has got to stay Caesar's friend, right? So Pilate orders him crucified. And so then in chapter 15, verses 33 to 39, he's taken out to Golgotha. And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. So from noon until 3. Why do some churches in small towns have Good Friday service from noon to 3? Because those are the hours that Jesus hung on the cross. When I was an intern in Barron, Wisconsin, Main Street shut down on Good Friday from noon to 3. And we had church. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders hearing it said, "Behold, he is calling Elijah." And one ran and filling a sponge full of vinegar, put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Here's the curtain of the temple that separates the Holy of Holies, where God's presence is said to be most focused on the earth, from the rest of the world. So when Jesus died, the curtain of the temple was shredded. It says torn in two. That's torn in two. So if you got a needle and scissors, you could fix that, right? What it says is it was shredded so that it couldn't be put back together, so that no one could close it up again. And what does that tell us? That nobody will separate us from God. There is no curtain anymore, all right? And where do we see God? Well, he's on that cross, right? That's where, in the temple, they say God meets human beings, God meets his creation on the stone. I think we talked about that sometime. The stone that Jacob used for a pillow when he had his dream of angels ascending and descending on the ladder to heaven. God doesn't meet us on the stone that Jacob used as a pillow. God meets us in his Son, who's hanging on a cross. All right? The curtain of the temple was torn in two. And then, verse 39, and when the centurion, Roman soldier, right? When the centurion who stood facing him saw that Jesus thus breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was the Son of God." So then a question is, did the centurion say that man was the Son of God? I mean, is he the first? Huh?
Is that was?
Was?
A mistake?
I suppose not in the centurion's mind, because he's looking at a dead man.
He thought he was God.
Now in the past tense for the centurion. Well, that's an interesting question. We'll come back to that real quickly. There are some who say, though, that here's what the centurion said. You got to be kidding. That man was the Son of God? Was he confessing or mocking? And I've heard sermons at Seminary Chapel preached on
Both ends.
both sides, because we don't know the inflection or the tone of voice. Truly, that man was the Son of God. Yes, I see, or what a joke, right? So then, Marlis, one thing that we need to make clear is that Jesus died on that cross. His life ended. So in that sense, it was proper to say in the past tense, okay? Now, we know that on the third day, he was raised from the dead, right? And that's what's in Mark 16. The women go to the tomb, and what are they carrying when they go to the tomb?
Oil.
Oil for,
Anointing.
to anoint him, to finish burying him. So they're thinking past tense too, right? When they go to the tomb. God did not raise his Son from the dead because everybody was expecting it. I mean, we know what Easter's going to be like. We'll come to church, we'll have Easter breakfast here, and then we're going to eat ham somewhere. Okay? We know what to expect. The women had no clue. So they go to finish burying Jesus, and they find the tomb empty, and Mark says a young man dressed in white. The other Gospels say an angel. Right? A young man dressed in white says, "You seek Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He's not here. He's risen. See the place where they laid him? Go and tell Peter and his disciples that he's gone before you to Galilee, just as he said." And so then it says the women left and said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. So then the question at the end of Mark for biblical scholars and for us is, why does it end like that? Why isn't there clapping? You know, and telling. Does that mean that they didn't say anything to anybody until they got to the disciples? You know? They must have said something to somebody because we got the Gospels, right? And they met Jesus in Galilee, like he said they would, you know. So there are some who say, I myself have preached Easter sermons. Who knows, I might preach another one. That the Gospel of Mark ends abruptly because there is no way to end a gospel. There is a way for us to live out the gospel. But as if to say, Jesus' story ends, you know, on page 93. That's not the way it is. It's an ongoing. It's a story that has a life of its own. And so we are finishing the gospel as it's being finished in our lives. Is that what happened? Or some say, no, the last page got lost. And so you'll see, if you look at Mark chapter 16, you'll see that there's a break between verse 8 and verse 9, right? Because some well-meaning soul thought we can't end the gospel with, and they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. So he wrote a proper ending. Well, was that a good thing or not so good? You decide, okay? You decide. So, you know, Rose says to Grandma, well, what kind of ending is that? And Grandma thinks, not much. And so Grandma finishes the story. You know, well, what happened next? I mean, you don't want to say, I don't know. So you say, well, they did this, and then they did that, and then. You know, I mean, you can just see how, I mean, people are people, right? I'm just trying to help here.
Right.
You know?
Well, who picked it up? That's what.
Right. That's right. We got to read another story.
Right.
Or let's just finish this one because we don't have time. I mean, you know, one way or the other. Okay? So that's our overview, our race through the Gospel of Mark. All right? Thoughts, comments? So next Sunday, I have invited Jill McClausich to talk about the proposed levy that all of us who live in School District 622 will be asked to vote on. And then Jill's going to take 10 minutes, not answer any questions during the thing, because when we talked at council about this, we got into a debate. And we don't have time for a debate, and that's not why she's coming. In fact, she can't debate. All she can do by law is present the facts. Okay? So she'll be here for 10 minutes, and then we'll look at the Gospel of Matthew. Okay? Thank you very much for today. You can leave the Bibles on the tables because we've got a Colossians Bible study Tuesday.
I was